Today on this edition of Seahawks Forever, powered by BetUS, just a couple of things to talk about. Pete Carroll back in the NFL, hired this morning officially as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, now the oldest head coach in NFL history. And if he plays out or coaches out the entirety of the contract he was handed, he will be almost 79 years old at the end of it. We'll get into that a little bit today with our special guest, Brian Nemhauser. You know him from Hawk Blogger and Hawk Blogger Mornings. Just completed his first year as a credentialed media member covering the Seahawks and doing a tremendous job. So I'm going to get his thoughts on what's happening in Vegas. How much of the band might Pete be looking to get back together and replicate the success he had here in Seattle? We're also going to talk about the Seahawks' ongoing offensive coordinator search. We have some new information just in the last couple of minutes that may impact that. And then Brian is also going to be in Mobile next week, as am I, covering the Senior Bowl. So we'll do a little preview there, talk about some of the guys that we're most anxious to see who could be future Seahawks. That's coming up next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Don't forget to head over to BetUS, check out the money lines and all the prop bets for the championship games, the conference championship games, coming up on Sunday. And if you sign up for a new account today, they will give you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your second and third deposits, up to $2,000 if you use the promo code YouTube150. And also, if you like casino games, BetUS has now added those to their website. You can get massive jackpots playing their casino games online, and right now they're giving you an even better deal, a 200% sign-up bonus on your first deposit, up to $5,000. So check that out as well. We'll get into all the stuff that I mentioned at the top with Brian in just a moment. Before I do, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notification of future episodes. Unless the Seahawks hire an offensive coordinator in the next 36 hours, this will be the last show that I do before I go to Mobile. And so if you want to be involved with all of the coverage down there in Mobile from the Senior Bowl all week long, most of it I will be going live at some point every single day with a recap and taking your questions and comments. And the best way to be in the know is to hit that bell button. It's the best way to support the channel too, is to subscribe to it. All the other ways are listed down below in the description. So just after wrapping up this conversation with Brian just a few minutes ago, hopped on Twitter just to see if there was any breaking news. And certainly there was. I know a lot of you were frustrated with the ongoing offensive coordinator search for the Seahawks, and there are a bunch of different reports about what the hangup may be. Mike Garafolo said it's probably not going to be until next week that we hear something definitive. Well, there might be some curveballs thrown into the mix now as well. Bobby Slowick fired by the Houston Texans moments ago after his second year as the offensive coordinator there, coaching CJ Stroud and that bunch down there. A year ago at this time, he was a hot head coaching candidate. I think he had 4 or 5 head coaching interviews, including with your Seattle Seahawks. Didn't get a second interview. He wasn't in that group, but they did interview him. Could it be, if indeed Hank Fraley is the way they're leaning, the offensive line coach from the Lions? Because based on putting all the dots together that are out there, doesn't sound like he's in play in Chicago with Ben Johnson. Doesn't sound like he's going to be given the opportunity to call plays in Detroit. I think that's going to go to Tanner Engstrand. So if the Seahawks want Fraley, and it kind of seems with the delay like that's the way they're leaning, but trying to pair him with an experienced pass game coordinator, there have been names thrown out there like Grant Udinski, who they've interviewed twice. I don't know if Clint Kubiak would be a candidate for that. I think he's going to have opportunities even now still to be the offensive coordinator in name and title and full responsibility. Scott Turner is a name that's come up in the last couple of days, and they interviewed Byron Leftwich as well. What about Bobby Slowick? It's so late in the process. He may have an opportunity to get an offensive coordinator job now. I could see him potentially being involved with Pete in Vegas or in New Orleans with whoever is hired as a head coach there. But just an intriguing name. He was part of that all-star cast of young coaches with the Washington Commanders, then Redskins, many years ago, that included Sean McVay and Mike Shanahan and Matt LaFleur and Mike McDaniel. And And Slowick was on that staff too. So he's got that Shanahan tree, Shanahan / McVay thing going for him there. Just another name to keep in mind. But without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Brian from Hawk Blogger Mornings, and Real Hawk Talk. And now a credentialed Seahawks beat writer. He's been there all year. He's usually the first guy that you hear asking a question at a press conference. That's usually Brian. That's how well he's done in his first year there. So we talk about all these subjects. Hope you enjoy. Well, Brian, it's always good to see you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to hop on the show. When I woke up this morning, I thought I'd be looking forward to a conversation about the Senior Bowl, maybe talk some Seahawks offensive coordinator. Lo and behold, just win baby meets win forever. Pete Carroll, the new head coach in Vegas. What's your first reaction to that?
Yeah, it's good to see you, Dan. It's such a genuine happiness for Pete Carroll that he's got a chance to rewrite kind of the end of his story. And for all of us, quite honestly, I think the game's better when Pete's in it. I can't wait to hear what his reflections have been after a year. I can't wait to hear if there's maybe some friction or hard feelings about how things transpired in Seattle or not. And but mostly just really happy for him and looking forward to seeing, quite frankly, I think the NFL is better when the Raiders are a good franchise, and they haven't been for a long time. So I think there's a lot of good things in there, and he's got his work cut out for him, that's for sure.
I think you and I are in the same boat on this. I've already been accused of being a little two-faced because I felt like it was time for Pete to go, and I'd said that a couple months before he was fired, but yet I'm ecstatic that he's back in the league, as you are. It's okay to be both, right?
I think there's no question. And there'll be a lot of folks that try to take a lot of inferences and a lot of extrapolate what this would have been or could have been. Look, the Seahawks had almost a decade of defensive erosion under Pete Carroll, who was a defensive head coach. He had multiple chances to reboot the roster, to reboot the coaching staff, went through multiple offensive coaches, multiple defensive coaches, multiple schemes, and it didn't work out. It was getting worse. And so it was absolutely the right time for a restart on the coaching side of things. Some could argue it was time for a restart more holistically, even in the front office. But there's no question it was time for a change. And at the same time, Pete Carroll absolutely can help a lot of organizations that have suffered through coaching and leadership that doesn't come close to what he can provide.
You make an interesting point. He's been awfully quiet, only given a couple interviews in the last year, but now he's going to be behind that podium a couple times a week and at the combine and everything else. So maybe we will learn more about how that all kind of went down. How much of the band do you think we may see him try to get back together?
It's funny. It depends on which kind of band you're talking about, because my mind goes to, can Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll exist in separate NFL divisions, or do they just always have to follow one another into that? So that's one part of the band that's already back together. And man, Pete Carroll versus Jim Harbaugh is always must-see TV. As far as player-wise, coaches-wise, I don't know. Pete has definitely, on the coaching side, always brought in familiarity over the hot new name. And so the challenge a little bit for him there is that Dan Quinn got a job last year and took some of his favorite names like Ken Norton and some of the other folks along with him. So, it'll be interesting to see who he brings in there. Maybe Gus Bradley. I guess he already got picked up somewhere, I think. But on the player side, everyone's going to jump to Russell Wilson or Geno Smith. I still think Sam Darnold is a very logical fit for the Raiders coming out of USC, which Pete has ties to. I think that changes that franchise's floor right away. And then they got the 6th pick in the draft, and you can either go for one of the really franchise-setting offensive linemen. You can get one of the great running backs if you want Ashton Jeanty in there. You can, Pete's not typically going to take a corner, but Will Johnson, Pete's known for picking corners. I think the Devin Witherspoon pick was largely him. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of fascinating storylines. I don't expect that it's going to be a lot of Seahawks that are currently on the roster heading down there.
Yeah, imagine. I have to think he's chomping at the bit at the opportunity to coach Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby. Imagine if Mason Graham is sitting there at 6 as well, and you know, he put together a pretty imposing defensive line there. And I will say this: the last time he took a year off from coaching after he was fired, he kind of reset his organizational philosophy, and look how that turned out, right? So, wishing for all the best down there. That AFC West is going to be must-see TV. I imagine we're going to see probably an in-season Hard Knocks next year on the AFC West. Wouldn't surprise me at all. We're going to talk about the Senior Bowl in a moment. I know we're both heading down to Mobile. I want to get some of your thoughts on that. But I thought by now we would have an offensive coordinator named in Seattle. It's one of the most intriguing, I guess, to use that word lightly, searches that I've seen conducted. Although when Shane Waldron was hired, that one kind of had two different lives. Also, it started out with Pete kind of looking for his type of guy, and then it shifted more towards what Russ wanted and sort of drug on for a couple of weeks. But it doesn't seem like any new names have entered the mix, except for maybe Scott Turner being in there. What do you think is the holdup? Because now it sounds like Mike Garofalo went on Jason Puckett's show yesterday, said we might not hear anything till next week. Are you concerned, frustrated, or do you just think they're putting it all together behind the scenes?
I'm not either concerned or frustrated. I've been far less flustered by the time than I think a lot of folks have. My assumption is, like, let's say that Hank Fraley is their guy. I don't know that that's the case, but let's say that that's the case. They interviewed him Tuesday. Well, we also know from the very beginning he was going to need a pass game coordinator. He knew it. They knew it. That was from the beginning. Well, let's say that Scott Turner is the guy that he wants. Is Mike Macdonald just going to hire Hank Fraley without talking to Scott Turner? I don't think so. What if Mike Macdonald wants Hank Fraley to talk to some of the in-house guys to see if he's going to keep any of them? Is he going to keep Scott Huff? Is he going to keep Jake Peets? Is he going to keep Frisman Jackson and Kennedy Polamalu? That doesn't happen overnight. So maybe they take a little bit of time. You know, Hank Fraley's got a bunch of kids and a bunch of dogs, and they live in the Midwest. Does he want to have his family come out and check it out? Does he need to talk to Dan Campbell? Did he promise that he would talk to Dan Campbell before he made? Like, all these things take time. No. So none of that shocks me. I think it would be ideal for them to make a decision before the Senior Bowl so that they are going down there. And that's the only time you're going to see 1v1 drills. And offensive line's massively important for this team. And not all offensive linemen play the same schemes the same way at the same level. So are you going to be more a zone heavy team? Are you going to be more, gap heavy team? I think affects who you're scouting. And so I certainly would like them to have that nailed down before then. I'm not sure that's going to happen at this pace. The one name that I think has not been mentioned until my show I did with Mike Sando, and I give Mike Sando all the credit on this, is Mike McCarthy. So Mike McCarthy is a candidate for the Saints head coaching job. So is Joe Brady. So is there are a couple other guys. If Mike McCarthy doesn't get that job, John Schneider and him have history together. Yeah. Does he become a obvious candidate for that position? Are they waiting out what happens with him before they make this decision? That's one other name to think about.
Yeah, John has spoken in reverential tones in the past about Mike McCarthy and his feelings for him and his respect for him as a coach. It feels like if something like that isn't brewing, that Fraley plus a passing game coordinator is kind of the way they're leaning, because I feel like if it was Kubiak, that hire might have happened quickly because he's kind of the total package. But if he is still in the mix, they may have to move quickly because there's still 5-6 offensive coordinator positions open. I could see Kubiak being a strong candidate in Vegas now. He seems like the kind of guy that Pete might be drawn to.
Yep. And I don't know if they've finalized what's going on in New York, but I know that with Aaron Glenn, there was some connection there as well.
Yeah, indeed. Has Robert Saleh signed and sealed in San Francisco yet?
I have not checked the latest on that, but the expectation is that is where he would be going. Yeah. The Saints would be wise to reach him, but he canceled his flight to Jacksonville after Liam Cohen took that role. So it seems likely that that's part of the ripple effect of that Cohen drama, is that they're getting the band back together in San Francisco or Santa Clara, as it may be.
Yeah. That seems a little odd to me. I feel like maybe the timing just isn't right, but it would have made sense, especially if Pete at this point in his career is considering taking a step back and kind of letting someone run the defense that, Robert Saleh came up under him all the way back as far as USC. So that would make some sense. Still time to get in on the outstanding offer that Doer is presenting to you, the viewers and listeners of this program. If you've never heard of Doer, they are my new favorite apparel company. High quality stuff. Doer is built for doing. These are my favorite right here. These stretch performance jeans, 20% stretch. They're incredibly comfortable. Almost feel like you're wearing joggers, but they're very well built, very, very high quality. Breathable material, antibacterial material, and sustainable materials whenever possible as well. Also a big fan of these no sweat moleskin shirts. They come in a variety of colors. Very, very soft and comfortable and versatile. And right now, if you are a viewer or listener of this program, you can get 20% off your first order at this unique URL. Go to shopdoer.com/forever. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/forever for 20% off your first order. Shall we talk about the Senior Bowl a little bit?
Let's do it.
So Mobile, Alabama side of the Senior Bowl, what has always been considered the sort of the premier showcase for all-star talent during the draft process, in part because NFL staffs have always coached down there. They get to see these players up close. The Shrine Bowl has made up some ground the last couple of years. Eric Galko has really done a tremendous job kind of bringing that up. But they're calling this potentially the best class ever at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, in part because of some of the underclassmen that are now able to play in the game. As you look forward to heading down there, what are you most excited about?
Well, besides Southern cooking, I guess 1v1 pass rush drills. I mean, I'm literally flying, as are you, but I'm taking a crazy trip in probably what's going to be bad weather. Hopefully it's not bad enough that they move it indoors and we don't get to see it, but 1v1 pass rush drills. I think you can learn more about offensive and defensive linemen in 10 minutes of watching those drills than you can in watching hours of game film. And so I want to see primarily some of the offensive linemen, like Tate Ratledge is a good example. I love his demeanor. I love his look. He's a little light to me, and I want to see how he holds up against some of these pretty good defensive linemen there. Jonas Avenea, who is a guy who's really high on my list, played tackle. I think his best fit's going to be guard. I think he's got the movement skills to be a really good guard. I want to see how he looks. Armand Membu, another guy that right tackle, 6'3", 314. I'll tell you, he reminds me of Deion Dawkins coming out of the plays for the Bills. I think he can play guard. I think he can play tackle. And I'm really intrigued, Dan. This happens to be a draft where there's so many guys that are guards and tackles, and they're not like tweeners. They legitimately could be both. And I think that that's an ideal pickup for the Seahawks this year. So obviously offensive line's a big place. And then, quarterback. I think I am curious about, I've been pretty skeptical about Jalen Milroe as a passer, but there's no denying his feet. And Jackson Dart is a guy that maybe has the widest spread of where he could go in this draft. And Mobile's probably going to have a big effect on where that is.
Yeah, trying to keep up with all the rumor mongering right now about, what people are hearing about quarterbacks moving up and down is enough to make your head spin. But we might see some separation down there at the Senior Bowl. A little disappointed that Will Howard's not going to be there now, because they played so late. And honestly, some of those Ohio State guys. I'm with you. I'm interested probably more than anything to watch the offensive linemen, not just because it's an obvious need and something that we're looking at as far as the Seahawks go, but where guys are played too. A lot of times those staffs down there will move players around. We know Christian Haynes got some run at center last year, and teams will ask for players to be given reps at certain positions to look at them. And there's so many, as you mentioned, so many guys that are sort of tweeners. And when I watch tape on some of these tackles in particular, but even some of the guards, these spread offenses in college, it's hard to find run reps sometimes to try and judge these guys and see how they do in the run game. And that's a little frustrating. One of my favorite guys after some late night tape watching last night is not Membo, but I think it's pronounced Embo. It's close.
Oh,
It's confusing
Embo.
as heck.
Yeah.
Marcus Embo out of Purdue. He's an undersized, played right tackle for them, but he's not going to play there in the league. He's barely 300 pounds, but he has some of the most intriguing hand usage. And I don't know if you've seen enough of this on tape from him, but he has I call it a haymaker. Like if he gets a guy's momentum going one way, he just likes to sort of club it back and let them keep going the way they're going. A real tenacious player who's being projected at center. So guys like that, like let's see him get some reps there, and see.
Yeah, I think I had Jordan Reed on my show this week, and he called him out as a potentially interesting fit for the Seahawks, and he has him as his #1 rated center on his board. And you watch him play, the way he moves, I can see that a lot more than tackle in the NFL. And I personally don't think I see guard at a 300-pound, size. He seems a little light there, but it'll be interesting. I don't know if the Seahawks are going to think that center's a need this year. I'm going to be really curious in free agency and in the draft. I have a feeling they feel pretty good about Olu Oluwatimi, and I think they also feel pretty good about Jalen Sundell. Yeah. And they also were cross-training Christian Haynes a little bit there as another option. So it'll be curious to see. But I also like Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College, 6'8", right tackle. Like I get a little bit of Dan Skipper vibes there. Like not a guy you're going to take to start right now, but anytime you can see a 6'8", tackle, I want to see what he looks like up close and personal.
And then it's always fun to see the small school guys and how they, match up and fit in against guys from a higher level of competition. Gray Zabel and Clay Webb, two guys that I can't wait to get my eyes on down there as well. And, all the focus right now among the fan base seems to be on offense, and for understandable reasons. There's the offensive line, which is an annual concern. And then there's always the question of when, not if, but when is John going to draft a quarterback that might look like a guy that has starter upside. But yet, there's a guy that's sitting in the office at VMAC with the title of head coach on that team who has a defensive background. Lots of intriguing guys on that side of the ball too. Who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a couple guys that really jump out to me that I'm excited to see. Deion Walker from Kentucky is 6'6", 345 pounds. And this guy moves. For a guy that big, he moves. And he's a guy that could sneak into the first round. He could be someone that goes in the third round. Like, hard to say. But I think his, not this past season, but the season before, I think he had 7.5 sacks. So he can do more than just stop the run. But Jonathan Hankins is going to be not with this team, I don't think. And I think this is a unique draft to potentially find the next. Some guys that could fit that mold aren't going to be there, like Tyleek Williams, Kenneth Grant, some of those guys. But curious about him. Jordan Birch. This is a guy there's no other guy that I can't wait to see what his weight is more than Jordan Birch, because he is listed as 6'6", 295. This guy looks like he's 275. And so he came into college as a interior defensive lineman. He's played edge the last couple of years at Oregon. He really reshaped his body in this last year. And I see a Jared Verse body type. I'm not saying he is Jared Verse as a player, but he is a power guy on the edge that is really intriguing to me. If he's at 290, 295, I'm less interested. If he's 280, 285, I think he could be an interesting player.
It's a good group down there, as you mentioned, and I find it interesting that fans don't really talk about defensive line as a need. They think it's a strength, but I think it's unlikely that they come out of this year's draft without taking a guy that's going to be in Mobile this week, someone out of that group. I think it's a need. And then I'm interested to see the linebackers, the inside linebackers in college. Sometimes it's hard for those guys to make a name for themselves. A lot of them play very specialized roles in college now. It's more cover than run and hit, and it's a class that's a position group I haven't dove into as deep yet. Not really familiar with a lot of the names, and so I'll be playing catch up on that a little bit the first couple of days down there, and then once you get eyes on them, it's a little easier. But
Carson Schwarzenegger is a guy out of UCLA that certainly is going to be interesting to watch, and I do think that linebacker is a sneaky need for the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. Once you get past Tyrese Knight, and assuming Ernest Jones is re-signed, You got Drake Thomas, who I think is a nice player, but I think you want more depth there and at least more competition. I don't know if that means a first or a second round pick, but I think you're going to be looking for a linebacker.
Let's finish with this because I know you got to go. Let's take a step back on the big picture again. If there is, make a prediction for me, one significant personnel move you think is going to happen this offseason.
Well, I'll say this. I think the Seahawks are going to sign a free agent guard that is going to be more than the bargain basement $1 or $2 million type of players like Laken Tomlinson that they signed last year. I think that they're going to spend at least $7-8 million, maybe $10+ million on a guard. I think there's some guards worth spending that money on. I think it's unlikely, but I don't think it's impossible that they will go towards the top end of the class with guys like Trey Smith, guy like Mekhi Becton. I think those guys are possibilities. It just would mean they'd have to go really against their past tendencies. And there's a lot of young, we just went through a few, there's a lot of promising young guards in this class. But do the Seahawks, who already have the young, like one of the youngest, maybe the youngest offensive line in the league, do they want their solution to be to add another rookie to their starting lineup? I don't think so. I think Mike McDonald's going to say, John, we need at least one guard that we can really count on. And I think that's going to be someone like one of the names I mentioned.
Makes sense. And they like the guys they have. It's a lot of fans just want to flush the whole group out and start over. But I think they still have hope for those guys. DK, Gino, are they both on the roster opening day?
Yes.
Okay. All right. It's on the record.
Yes.
You heard it from Brian. Well, listen, I look forward to seeing you down there. And as soon as you find out the best places to eat, shoot me a DM and let me know.
I will do that, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, and just to finish, congratulations on your first year as a credentialed beat reporter for the Seahawks. Looks like you had a ton of fun doing it, and you killed it, man.
Oh, nice of you to say. Thanks, man. I'm just kind of climbing blindly through it, and hopefully people are getting something out of it. It's been fun for sure.
Indeed. Good to have you, man. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Quick and dirty today. A lot to digest there, though. Cannot wait to get your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you think about Pete in Vegas. Is he crazy? Taking a job in that division? Jim Harbaugh, Andy Reid, Sean Payton. That's insane, right? And then let me know what you think of the offensive coordinator search. Is there another name out there? Do you prefer maybe one of these curveballs? How about Brian's idea of Mike McCarthy? It's something I've been talking to with a couple of guys. Bryce and Michael Thompson, guys that are on the show. We talk all the time about draft and coaching moves and everything else. And it was Michael who first kind of turned me on to the idea that maybe they're waiting to see if Mike McCarthy gets a job. I've mentioned that on Twitter and gotten some immediate pushback from fans. I don't think they really like the idea, but he is a tremendously respected play caller in the league. Or is there another name that's not being talked about that you want to be in the mix? Let me know down below. Again, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for future notification, a notification of future episodes. I've said that enough. You'd think I'd get it down one of these days, right? For being in Mobile all next week covering the Senior Bowl, I will go live every day, get your questions and comments, and let you know what I'm seeing there up close and personal on a daily basis as I try to comb both those rosters for future Seahawks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Head on over and subscribe to the other YouTube channel, The Pick Is In, at The Pick Is In Pod. Also follow that Twitter account. That's Bryce Coots and I. It's our new draft-centered channel. It's not Seahawks. It's league-wide. Got a couple episodes up there already, and we'll be doing a bunch of content while I'm down in Mobile as well. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks. We'll see you from Mobile.